We back, but is anybody here? I don't think so. Nobody here. So it's post-match coverage. Figured I'd jump on, see if anyone joins. Tick tock, tick tock. So Alcaraz, of course, won this match. Deservedly so. Learned a lot in this match, especially when it comes to making predictions in the future. So I'm going to give away some inside information. So hopefully, usually as these lives start, there's only a couple people in, and then we usually get a few more people. So let's see what happens. So we're all the Alcaraz fans saying, I told you so. And the Raz fans are definitely very rabid, seemingly more so than the Sinner fans. They don't like when you say something or you choose the other player over Alcaraz. They just don't seem to like it. Where the Sinner fans seem to be a little bit more agnostic, let's say that. So I figure we'll get some Alcaraz fans in here eventually that say, see, it told you so. There's no way Sinner can beat Alcaraz when he's playing his best. And is that true or is that false? Well, if only it was so simple as that. If each player plays their best, who wins? It has nothing to do with that whatsoever, in my opinion. This is all about court surface, court speeds, and so forth. So interesting match, or actually kind of a dud. You know, compared to their other two matches, this one was the most lopsided, the least entertaining. At least I thought so. And it's not because I favor Sinner. It's just it was the least. The rallies weren't particularly long. There were a lot of mistakes. Alcaraz served incredibly well with a lot of aces, so there was no drama on him getting broken other than once in the second set. So not much drama, certainly, other than the last couple points where there was a little drama. So it was a good match, right? But it wasn't a great match. You know, it's interesting. So F97's great comment. Thanks for leaving that comment. Didn't feel like Sinner played at his highest level, low first serve percentage, and some unusual mistakes. That's fair, and I think that's spot on. But I think there's more to it than that. It's not about what when people just started joining, I said this is the least entertaining, and I learned something about this match. If these guys play their best level, who will win? And I don't think it's about that. It's not who plays the best. It's who's playing, what conditions or the environment, meaning the court surface mostly, favors that person a little bit more than the other person. So I've made a lot of talk in the past about slippery surfaces favoring Alcaraz, low ball bouncing and fast courts favoring Sinner. And we learned a lot from this match. And it wasn't about Sinner playing badly. So if you watch Sinner missing a lot more shots uncharacteristically than he normally does, that wasn't because he was playing badly. That's two reasons. One, which never really changes, Alcaraz's speed forces you to do things or go closer to the lines than you normally would, and maybe fire on your shot prematurely. But two, or most importantly, no doubt, Carlos's first serve was much better, and Sinner definitely didn't serve great. But I still don't think that's the determination. Even if Sinner served better, yes, would he have held more? Would he got into a tiebreaker? Which is a shame that we didn't get any tiebreakers in this match. But I still don't think it would have changed the outcome. I think the court surface favored Alcaraz far too much. And, normally when I make predictions on, I sort of have a list of criteria that I go through making a prediction. In the men's game, you'll notice that typically the better mover wins, right? If you're just a better mover in tennis, more agile and faster, you have a huge advantage in the men's game. So if you put up Sinner versus Alexander Zverev, no competition. It has nothing to do with it, or less to do, very little to do with their strokes, and it has all to do with their movement. Zverev just can't move the same as Sinner. And so Sinner always has that, based on everything being equal, has that huge advantage in movement. But when it comes to these two guys, even a slippery surface, you could say that on clay, Alcaraz has advantage. Apparently on grass, you would think that Alcaraz should have an advantage because it's a slippery surface. but it's not the top level criteria here when it comes to these two guys playing. It's all about the ball bounce. It's everything to do with how high or low the ball bounces. If the ball's bouncing higher, you're going to see Sinner having more trouble and making more mistakes, hitting winners or dictating play when he's having to hit the ball up higher. So he's either going to have to take it earlier and be much more aggressive, which causes more mistakes, or he's going to hit it higher, which he just naturally makes more mistakes there. It's not that he's bad at hitting high balls, he's just unable to hit a winner off a high ball against Alcaraz. So that played itself out here. The Australian Open is a lower bouncing ball, I believe so. And you see that advantage goes to Sinner. And the lowest bounce is, of course, at Wimbledon. And that's clearly the advantage for Sinner at this point. So when the ball's bouncing lower, Sinner hits a lower ball better than Alcaraz. Alcaraz, I wouldn't necessarily hits a higher ball better, but maybe. But it's just that Sinner can't overcome Alcaraz's speed because he can't hit the ball as cleanly, as hard, as often when the ball is high. And Alcaraz did an exceptional job. Then this is the funny stuff when people comment. So Tomto, Carlos is the better player than Sinner. I'm sure you believe that in your mind. These both are incredible players. Like I'm talking about here, it's not about who's playing better as the better player. It's who plays better on a particular surface is always proving to be the difference. And not just surface, what that particular surface. So you can get a hard court that bounces low, depending on the balls being used and the speed of the court and the grit of the ball. So it's not to say Carlos or Sinner is better on hard courts. It's much deeper than that, right? It's the grit, it's the ball they're using, it's the environment that's out there being played with. That is the biggest determination when these two guys play each other, is who is able to take advantage, or the height of the ball and the speed of the ball favors one person by like a half a percentile more than it does the other person. And that changes this match dramatically. There seemed to be no question in this match that Alcaraz was going to win. He had all the advantages. Once the match got underway, you could just see it. Not only was he serving better, yes, he was playing a little bit better, mostly just on the serve, but everything just came into his strike zone, and not everything was in Sinner's strike zone. And that just made it impossible for Sinner to overcome. So there's no doubt in this match, even though Sinner won the second set, there seemed to be very little doubt or no doubt whatsoever, unless Carlos was going to play at a lower level, which didn't seem like it was going to do. So it was all about the serve. Clearly Alcaraz served way better, and there was hardly any break points for Sinner. So no doubt, but I don't know if it was all about the serve. I think it was all about the surface. I still think if Sinner was serving a lot better at a higher percentile, a 60 percentile in his first serve, I still think he would have lost this match fairly comfortably, losing that match. But who has the better form? But Chris Vale. So Chris, you say, I agree surface is important, but also who has the better form on that day. I think, yeah, that's true. But these guys always play incredibly well. But my point was that Sinner didn't have a bad day because he was having a bad day. He wasn't having a bad day. He was having a more difficult day to beat Alcaraz on this surface, the way the ball was bouncing. It was very lively, like I said in my prediction video. It's a very lively surface. The kick serve to Sinner's backhand was a problem, and Sinner wasn't taking it early enough, often enough. He did at the very end of the match, which is also risky. And it just caused him problems, just like it caused Novak. So when you think someone's not playing as well, I don't think it was because Sinner was playing a little, other than him not serving well, first serves. I don't think anything had to do with him not playing well. I think the surface and Raz's speed forced Sinner to make more mistakes. So that's my thoughts on it. I just noticed that Sinner's fitness has declined since he dumped. I don't know. I didn't see much of a fitness. I didn't see any effect. This was not a very demanding match. At least I didn't think it was demanding. I think both guys could have easily went 5 sets because this match was not demanding or hard in the bodies. There weren't long rallies. It wasn't particularly hot out. So I don't think fitness was much of an issue here. It was just more of quality and court surface. But And Chris says, I think Sinner played well, but Carlos just better. Yeah, that's true. Carlos seemed to play better, but again, why did he play better? I think there's more to it because both of these guys came into ready to play, and were not in bad form whatsoever. So I think it's more the court surface forcing Sinner not to play as well as he could have, with the exception of the serve. F97, it was quite clear that Sinner couldn't dominate from the baseline. The surface speed didn't allow for easier winners on Sinner's side, and Alcaraz could catch up on the balls and weren't good and take over. 100%, like 100%. Sinner had to hit ridiculous shots, and Alcaraz's balls were penetrating more, which was, I wouldn't say unusual, right? But Alcaraz was able to be more aggressive and put Sinner onto defense more often than Sinner could. I mean, Alcaraz's retrieval today was unbelievable, right? He just felt like he was going to get to everything no matter. I mean, you saw the points that Sinner won, some of the points that he had to do to win those points was really amazing, right? So, and not sustainable. So JP, do you think this is the worst Sinner has played since 2023? Alcaraz was excellent, but I thought Sinner was very bad. Yeah, I think he probably joined late, JP. I think it was because of court surface. The ball was very lively, jumping up high. I think that's when Sinner doesn't play his best, when he has, or not play his best. It's more difficult for Sinner to play when Alcaraz gets the ball up high on Sinner, and that's what happens. So you think it's forehand was a complete mess? Hey, I still think it's because of what Alcaraz's speed brought to the table, the court conditions, how hard it was to hit winners, and where the ball was bouncing. It was bouncing up high. Alcaraz has a lot of action on his shots, and you have to be really respectful of Alcaraz driving a ball with incredible pace, and then also jumping it, getting it up higher. Those kick one-handed back, not the jump backhands that Sinner does. He didn't have to do a lot of them today, but he can't put enough pace on this surface. You saw it in Wimbledon when he hit that one-handed kick backhand. He could drive through the court and it would slide and it would put Alcaraz in a lot of trouble. Not here, not in this court. So Sinner was also more nervous than usual. Hard to say. I don't know about that. He seemed to get pretty pissed off in a way, which was nice to see. I actually saw some emotion in him getting angry. So who knows? I don't think these guys really get particularly nervous. I think they get frustrated they can feel like shit, man. Like if you've played a decent level tennis, when you're struggling with another person's ball on that day, on that surface. And within the first few games, Sinner knew that Alcaraz's ball was problematic on that day, on that surface. You could just see it. And Sinner knows that. I mean, you know it in the first game or two when you're playing a match against someone who's a bigger hitter or hits flatter or hits more spin, whatever the characteristic is. Some days you just feel like you can't hurt the other player as much as they can hurt you. And Sinner knew that today. He clearly felt it. And Sinner, but he's the number one player in the world. Well, now number two. You try and go bigger and put your opponent on the defense, which we can't do. Most people can't do, but Sinner can do it, and he can do it to Alcaraz. He did it almost in the French Open. He did it in Wimbledon. But Alcaraz's speed on this court condition, he knew. You could feel it. He was doing everything he could to try and, counter anything that Alcaraz could do to him. But the weight of Alcaraz's ball on this surface was definitely favorable to Alcaraz. So that's what I know. So, and Manuel, everyone is saying that with the roof closed, Sinner would be an advantage because of the ball's lower bounce. Much cooler inside. I don't think it bounces lower indoors. It does speed up a little bit, which might be a little bit lower of a bounce, but not much. Very, very little. The ball bounces. I played in Flushing Meadows many times. I grew up playing on those courts. As a matter of fact, I played many ETA tournaments in my teens at Flushing Meadows on those courts. I haven't played there in quite some time, but of course the grit changes over time and the resurfacing. And I played indoors on the same courts there as well. Not a big difference in the ball bounce. The environment changes a little bit, but not particularly the bounce. Like you get a cleaner environment, of course, when you're playing inside because there's no wind whatsoever. But the bounce really doesn't change very much. Carlos knew what at Wimbledon. I don't know what that means. Sorry. Oh, I like that great username from Smartass. I wanted Alcaraz to win, but I wanted another epic like the French Open. Yeah, I did too. This was kind of a ho-hum match, right? This was not an exciting match compared to what we all expect of these two guys. This was the least compelling match. Rome was more compelling. Wimbledon was more compelling. Roland Garros was amazing. And of course, Cincinnati was a dud because of Sinner's injury. So this was, for these two guys, dare I say dud, but it was somewhat of a dud of a match from what we expect from these two guys. And again, I think it was mostly due to, yeah, you could say Sinner serve would have been definitely better if Sinner served better. But I just didn't see any way that Sinner wins this match. The court conditions just favored him too much, which was surprising to me because then when I did my prediction video, I thought it was kind of neutral. But I was definitely wrong about that. It wasn't neutral. I should have known too. You could see the action on the ball. And as soon as I said this court was lively, I should have just recognized in my mind that favors Alcaraz 100% every time. So let's go to some more comments. So thanks for all the comments. We've got a pretty good group in here. This is pretty awesome. Let's see. Level was high, but no drama. I agree. Points were short, like just not all, there were some great points here and there. It's like 15 ball rallies and so forth, but it wasn't really particularly exciting. Big mental grid against Sinner after Wimbledon. Come on. You really underestimated Alcaraz. Oh, shit. Underestimate Alcaraz. No. I don't know if that was the right choice of words that you meant, Assad, that I underestimated Alcaraz. Never underestimate. How can you underestimate that guy? I didn't put, again, if you put this same match, same day, same place with a lower bouncing court, I think you reverse this. It's not about underestimating one guy or the other. It's what conditions favor one guy over the other. Like, again, I usually resort to speed and agility as the defining factor in most men's matches as the highest importance of criteria. And that still applies to all men's matches except for these two guys because they both move incredibly well. Different styles, of course. Sinner has more length and Alcaraz is just maybe a little faster and quicker. But Sinner's ability to move and with his length is almost on par with Alcaraz. So it really doesn't come down to movement as much as it does where the ball's bouncing. All right, take a few more questions here. Do you think that Alcaraz used the Novak mental game by overpowering his opponents early? He was consistently winning the first breaks. Yeah, the +1, like I mentioned, maybe you weren't in here just a few minutes ago, saying that the players know when someone's ball is giving them problems, and Sinner knew it right away that Alcaraz's ball was penetrating and tough to handle. And you could see it. We could see it on TV, and there's no doubt that Sinner knew it. You just know as a player when you match up with someone, even in rec tennis, in a warm-ups, you oftentimes know it, but you certainly know it early on, and you try and have to figure out different strategies to counteract someone who might be moving better, overpowering you with movement, overpowering you with their shots, outlasting you with their ability to play longer points. Like this is not something you recognize at end of the first set. Like this early on. When someone has one of those advantages, they're just grinding harder, or they're hitting harder when overpowering you, or they're serving better and overpowering you. You just know. I mean, these guys know instantly, and you have to figure out strategies to try and throw them off of those advantages. These comments, Sinner is too delicate. He needs to go train on the equator, maybe in Africa. I think that's probably a joke. And Emmanuel, what do you think about Alcaraz's chance of winning AO? Shit, yeah. I mean, it's got to be one of the two, right? Who else is going to win? Alcaraz has, I think, struggled at, has he won an Australian Open? Who can say in the comments? Why can't I think if he's won an Australian Open, right? He's won 2 US Opens, 2 Wimbledons, 2 French Opens, and no AOs, right? So can he win the AO? Of course he can win the AO. I guess it just depends on, how ready he comes into play. It's got to be one of these two guys. But the ball bounces lower typically in Australia, or at least so it seems. That favors Sinner. But of course, Alcaraz can win, but we'll see when it comes to January, right? Aaron, thanks for the comment. Great discussion. I feel relieved to understand the dynamics of the court surface better. Appreciate your stuff. Oh, thank you very much. Just found you in this tournament. Cool. Appreciate it. Yeah, been doing the channel for about a year now. It's it's always a slow slog to grow your subscribers and grow the channel. Of course, you got to keep making good content and hopefully content that resonates with people. I think some people can find me controversial because I just talk about things sometimes that are just on my mind, for better or for worse. I call a spade all the time. I get to talk about things that you would never hear the pundits talk about because they have to do the corporate dance and they have to sort of kiss up to players. They don't want to alienate relationships and so forth, and that's understandable. But that's the beauty of having a YouTube channel, is you get to free yourself a little bit and speak your mind. I never do it maliciously. That's never the intent, to be mean or malicious, except in the very rare times when someone deserves it. And my favorite punching bag is of course, well, Kyrgios. Thank you. Nick Kyrgios, because he's just not a good human being, right? He's just an indecent human being. And I no problem, being a little bit judgmental or even nasty when it comes to people who I just think are really bad human beings. I'll just leave it at that now. So thanks for that. Thanks for watching. That's the beauty of having a YouTube channel, is you get to at least free your mind and talk like you want and speak your mind. And some people may agree or disagree. And I welcome the constructive comments, as long as someone's not being a complete troll and ass, then so be it. Those people get shadow banned. But I've only had to shadow ban 3 people on the channel in a year and a half because they're just leaving just completely inappropriate comments. So that usually doesn't bother me, right? You're always going to have a few people who just don't have decency or good perspective, even on a tennis channel, right? All right, so ex-prodigy god, let's see. Alcaraz's peak is higher than Sinner. Blah, blah. I've heard that time and time again. You're just recanting what someone else has said. I don't believe that peak is higher than Sinner. It depends on the court surface and on the day. He has more creativity and more options. That's true. But a peak higher than Sinner, nope, I don't buy it. These two guys are incredible athletes. I still don't even buy that when people in the broadcast, I don't know if you heard this, that McEnroe and James Blake were talking about the technology in tennis and that these guys are even playing better than Novak and Federer and Nadal. Don't buy it. I've seen tennis for a long time. These guys are incredible. Yes, they're playing more offensively on a regular basis than those guys did. And but Federer at his peak, Novak at his peak, Nadal at his peak, just like these guys. If you think these guys are playing at a higher level, if it is, it's so minimal. I think people just have recency bias and don't realize that how incredible those players were when they were playing at their peak. And you may disagree with that, but my point was, on the broadcast, they were talking about technology being the difference maker, that you're talking about string technology. Whoa, I wanted to be on the broadcast so badly to dispute that nonsense that they were regurgitating. It is true that string technology is the greatest advanced technology in tennis in the past 40 years, since we went from wood rackets to aluminum rackets and aluminum rackets to graphite rackets, which was in the late 80s. So however how many years that is. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So it's 40 years. And then there was string technology that came out in the late 90s and early 2000s when Alu Power came out. That was the greatest advancement in tennis since the racket change. And I would even argue every bit as much. But these guys were saying that Alcaraz and Sinner have the advantage of, because, John called it synthetic strings. Alu Power came out in 1997, Gustavo Kuerten won the French Open with it in 1999. I think it was his first one, or was it actually 97? Someone in the comments, you know. And this is not a new technology. Racket technology has hardly changed since the late 80s. And string technology has not changed since Alu Power. There are a lot of different strings than Alu Power out there, but these guys are still using well, not these guys. These guys are using RPM Blast for Alcaraz, which has been around for what, 12 years, maybe more. And Sinner is using Head Hawk Touch. Head Hawk Touch? Yes, Head Hawk Touch, which has been around a long time either. And those two strings are no better than Alu Power. They last longer, or at least, no, those two strings don't actually last that much longer than Alu Power. So the nonsense is that these guys have had advantage of string technology, and that's made them, and racket technology, that makes them better than Novak was, Federer was, and Nadal was. Baloney. Like, they've used those strings as well, just as long, right? So it's not about string technology, hasn't changed at all in the past 20 years. Yes, there are different variations from, of course, textured strings and sided strings, but they're no better than straight Alu Power round. Yes, they may last longer and tension maintenance might be better, but that whole nonsense that these guys are better because of technology, racket technology, like, go get a Pure Drive from 15 years ago or whenever the Pure Drive came out. It's, a lot of people argue that it was better then than it is now. Put a Pure Drive, get them set up the same way, same racket tension, same weights, balance, swing weight. I use a racket. I got a profile right over here, right around the corner, from 1987, Wilson profile, big thick beam. I could hit with it just as well as I can with my own racket. Actually, it has a lot more power because it's such a thick beam. And when you compare it, like, you don't play any differently. Maybe a little more consistently with today's rackets because of the flex it has, but racket technology hasn't changed very much. Marketing companies want you to think that, but take a racket from, look, Sinner's racket's like 12 years old when they came out 10 years ago. He's not using the latest and greatest racket technology. All the pros are using old rackets that are just customized to their weight. So I know I went off on a tangent about that, so I don't know if people think that's was interesting or not. But again, I like to speak my mind when I hear some, they got to fill airtime, and sometimes they got to fill airtime with just nonsense. And I just wish someone would once in a while constructively call them out and say, no, that's not true. Like, let's talk facts here, not just fill airtime for filling airtime. So let's see. Good analysis, always except for the particular final where you clearly missed Alcaraz form and serve performance. True. Somewhat true. Serve performance, Alcaraz. I didn't talk about that enough in the prediction video. I would say that is true. I should have put more emphasis on Alcaraz not getting broken. But what I would have said then is that Bublik also didn't get broken all tournament long, and then Sinner broke him, 18 times during in the 3 sets. So serve performances are dependent on who they're playing. And yes, Alcaraz did serve amazing today. Sinner less so, but that was not the difference maker in my opinion. Even if Sinner served at the same level, Alcaraz most likely wins that match because of the rallies just favored, the court conditions and the rallies favored Alcaraz because of the liveliness of the surface, something that I also missed in the prediction video. When I said the court surface was lively, I said it shouldn't favor either of them. Definitely wrong about that. In play, watching the two guys play on this court surface, it favored Alcaraz without a shadow of doubt. So even if they served equally as well and they got into more tiebreakers, you never know what happens. Of course, it's the reason we play the game, but I still think that Alcaraz had all the likely advantages to win this. Good night from Austria. It's late there. I just left Germany last week. Hello to you in Austria. Good night. Have a good night. So you're at midnight, 12:30. Thanks for staying up. That's about what my bedtime was when I was in Germany. Love spending summers in Europe. So I got to make it to Vienna sometime soon because it's one of my bucket list cities that I have not been to. Love to play some tennis there as well. So there. No, he hasn't. Okay. Good evening. Good evening. As best as the AO. Why do I think JP? Why do I think Sinner's return was so bad today? Court conditions, bounce, just got up too fast. You saw the same thing at Novak. Novak couldn't handle Alcaraz's kick serve, it just got up. I've dealt with that many times playing matches when someone's kick serve still have that huge problem. Someone's kick serve just keeps getting up on you faster. And it was just uncomfortable. That's the difference between Wimbledon and US Open, is that kick serve just didn't do nearly as much at Wimbledon, right? It just slides and it bounces lower at Wimbledon, and Sinner was going to crush it like he did. And he does the same thing at the Australian Open. But at the US Open, under this year's court conditions, that's why his return was bad. I think you probably mean mostly on the backhand, but on the forehand as well. He's got to get that wrist pronated and up high, the way he takes those returns. But he did shank quite a few forehand returns as well. All right, Marco, if you find Federer's forehand appealing, then it's quite unexpected that you like Sinner, who has an extreme Western grip, bent arm, wristy technique. Meanwhile, Alcaraz, yeah, it's we all are different and subjective. Federer's forehand was beautiful. I also find Sinner's forehand to be also very appealing. Not as much as Federer's, but that wrist pronation and how quickly he rotates it from there to there, and it's still a biomechanically incredible swing. So is Alcaraz's. I find Alcaraz's less appealing. It's hard to even put it into words why I find it less appealing. It's just that's why we're all different. We all see the game and we see strokes a little bit differently. I make no bones about it. When I like a player, it's always first because of their character, their sportsmanship, their decency, how they are as human beings. So like the waiter test, are they kind, decent human beings? And then their game. If their game is beautiful or nice looking or appealing, but if they are just, I find them not to be particularly decent human beings, then I don't care how beautiful their game is. I'll always root against them. I don't know. It's just how I'm wired. I always go character of a person over their game style. But when you have someone like both of these guys, awesome character, both are amazing as human beings, great sportsmen. We're blessed or privileged to be able to watch these two guys. But then after that, why do I pick Sinner over Alcaraz in terms of my preference? Just because of his game. I find his game to see such a relatively tall guy at 6'4", the way he moves and how he slides into it, and his forehand, particularly his forehand stroke mechanics. Backhand stroke mechanics aren't that appealing to me in terms of Sinner. And certainly not Alcaraz's. I actually not a fan of Alcaraz's backhand stroke mechanics in terms of how they look. Not a fan really at that at all. But I'm also not a huge fan of Sinner's. It's very simple. Alcaraz's volleys are awesome, amazing. Those are very appealing. His drop shot's very appealing. But overall, I prefer Sinner. Sinner's serve is not really appealing to me. I still think he could be a lot better on his service motion. It's, Pete Sampras is the gold standard if you want to look at a perfect service motion, like literally perfect service motion. Could never even imagine having a better service motion than Pete Sampras. If you're not familiar with Pete and you haven't watched his, it is a thing of beauty, probably the nicest stroke of any strokes in the history of tennis. Anyone else have a contender for that? Like Pete Sampras' serve, always wanted Agassi to beat Pete, but Pete's serve was just next level. People said, they loved Federer's serve. It's quite nice, nice looking serve, but nothing compared to Pete's serve, in my mind anyways. I'm good with tennis on analysts. Underestimate Alcaraz. He thrives on being underdog. He feels less pressure. Oh, I don't think he gives a shit about what some analysts say. That's the beauty of world-class, top world-class athletes. Sinner doesn't care whatsoever what some analyst says or what the pundits say. These guys are so wire hardened to know what they're doing. They stay focused on what they can control. All the best athletes in the world don't care about outside noise. So if you think that Alcaraz cares about him being underestimated, I don't think he gives a shit at all. I don't think Sinner cares at all. They know these guys are two freaks when it comes to being so young and having so much perspective. They were raised right. They were trained right. They get it. These guys just really get it. I want to talk about someone who doesn't get it. I should probably do a video on this. Did you hear the comment? If you want to talk about the least self-aware player Well, there's quite a few of them, right? But the least self-aware player on the tour, and if you wanted just one snippet of information, it was Alexander Zverev. In the quarterfinals or in after the fourth round, he said, "I am here." They said, Alcaraz and Sinner are are the two people to beat. And he actually said, "Well, I'm here to disrupt the party." Like, I don't know if he heard himself say that. It's one thing to say, I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to try and compete with those guys and maybe try and disrupt them here and there. But he actually said after the fourth round or the quarterfinals that, did he even make the quarterfinals? That he's here to disrupt the party. You talk about tone deaf or completely not self-aware. That's Alexander Zverev. Maybe he misspoke. I don't know, but it's comical. And the funny thing is what you say, just like what I'm saying right now, what comes out of your mind and what comes out of your mouth, there's a direct link, of course. And when someone says it in that manner and they don't immediately catch themselves and try and correct themselves, like Alexander Zverev, who's, you could blame it on language sometimes, but he speaks perfect English. Um, so when he says that, that's what he actually thinks, and that is completely tone deaf and or just not completely not self-aware, because he has no chance of breaking up the party between Sinner and Alcaraz, not at least until he proves it, right? You would never hear Alcaraz or Sinner say something like that. You know who else would say that, who is also completely not self-aware, is Rune, like Runa, right? Runa would say the same thing. I want to compete and win just as many Grand Slams as Sinner and Alcaraz. Oh boy, that's great to have that in the back of your head, but to constantly say it like someone like Runa does, says it all the time. I want to compete. And it's wonderful to keep it in your head, but keep it in your head. That's not something you want to like verbalize, because it shows how unaware or self-unaware you are of what you're saying, because you need to be putting in the work and thinking day to day, just like Sinner says, well, we'll see what tomorrow brings. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to do it. That's saying that is reinforcing what you believe. So if you say something that is not self-aware, you're reinforcing nonsense, right? It's fiction. It's not going to come true just because you say it. So if you say it 1,000 times, it doesn't mean it's going to come true. You're just delusional. That's what delusion is. So again, ran off on a tangent regarding self-awareness, but you would never see Alcaraz or Sinner, because these guys have too much perspective and awareness that what they are capable of and what they're not capable of. So you'd never hear it's like Alcaraz say, I'm gonna win every Grand Slam and beat Sinner every time. No, he's gonna go into a match saying, I'm gonna do everything I can. I'm gonna work really hard, and if I don't win, I left it all on the table, and I'm happy with that. That's true champions. That's the mindset of a true champion. I didn't know there was a live. Great channel and analysis. Thank you very much, Fabio. Got it. Thank you. Let's see which comment. Oh, there's a lot of comments and they're not showing up on my screen already. I actually have to scroll. So did you notice that Alcaraz last serve out wide was the same way he won against Casper Ruud? Well, sorry, I can't remember all the way back to 2022. But that is like Novak's out wide serve. That is a killer serve Alcaraz has. The out wide serve that with a lot of slice. That's the serve that Sinner needs to work on, right? His serve out wide is more of a slice topspin serve. He comes over the top of the ball, sort of like at the 130 position, where Alcaraz comes a little bit more on the side of it and really cuts it a little bit more with side spin, just like that ridiculous overhead he hit with crazy action and side spin, which any of us can hit that crazy side spin, but not with that kind of control, right? The more spin you hit, the harder it is to control unless you practice it all the time. So that was interesting. Not sure whether Fabio says not sure whether Sinner's first serve percentage was discussed earlier. It was, and of course it was a factor. His first serve percentage being bad wasn't, but it wasn't the deciding factor in this match. I think the ball's liveliness and bounce was the deciding factor. Even if Sinner served a lot better, yes, he would have held more often, a little bit easier, but I still think he loses this match. Buck Z, TK, what can Sinner do to improve that atrocious serve? That's where I was going with this. Thank you very much for the reminder. When I talked about Pete Sampras and had an incredible serve, that I don't like Sinner serve. Sinner has, dare I say, biomechanic flaws. They're not biomechanic flaws in a serve. There's a organic, lack of natural flow. Well, what kind of made up bullshit was that I just said, right? But no, there's a lack of organic flow to his serve. It's sort of a manufactured stroke in how from the pinpoint stance to how he approaches the ball and his racket drop. It's just not completely, I'm not saying his serve is bad, right? But it's not good enough at times. It's certainly nowhere near like Pete Sampras's. Pete Sampras's serve was so good because it was such, when we look at a stroke and we see it's beautiful, as us as humans, we see a stroke as beautiful, like Federer's forehand. It's not just beautiful for some unknown subjective reason. It can be subjective at times. It's beautiful because it looks organic and natural. It just flows. And that also means it's a perfect kinetic energy transfer from your feet all the way to the end of the stroke, right? When something is that smooth and that natural and that beautiful looking, it also means the biomechanics and the stroke mechanics are perfect as well. So when you see a motion or any stroke, Amanda Anisimova's backhand, another great example, right? There is nothing hitchy, manufactured, anything about that backhand. Anisimova's backhand is incredibly smooth and natural, and it is beautiful to watch because it is so smooth. And that means her technique and the stroke mechanics and the biomechanics are perfect, right? That is like just a beautiful shot. And it's beautiful because we can all see beauty. And when you see beauty like that, you know it's organic and that's the way something should be done. And that's what you see. You're seeing just perfect biomechanics in action when you see it, when you see something like that. So that's what I think he definitely needs to work on, his fluidity of his serve. It's hard to do at this stage of his career, but you never stop trying to make improvements. Novak, of course, did it on his forehand. So there you go. Federer's peak was insane. I agree. Peak Federer can still smoke this Alcaraz with his consistency. I think I just think that they're all at that same level. Agassi said in his book, this is from Top 10, Agassi said in his book that string changed everything. Absolutely. Agassi said when he first played with Alu Power after Gustavo Quinton was using it for a while, that it was like cheating, right? And I still remember using my first set of Alu Power like in 2002, I think, in Key Biscayne, and I never played such great tennis. It just transformational, what tennis string in the early 2000s did. But Federer played with, I think it's actually a mistake a little bit, and I say this loosely. Any player that's using gut today, so you got Dimitrov, you have Zverev used gut hybrid, Novak does, and I think Ruud does, and also there's a few players in the top 10 that still use gut hybrids. I've tested many gut hybrids with polys, and without a doubt, 100% certain, I understand why people use gut as hybrids because it gives you a little bit more comfort. It has a really unique feel, and if you've been playing with it a long time, you get comfortable with it. But and it's a little bit more powerful, right? It gives you a little bit more springiness. But without a doubt, I can guarantee it. You can test it. You can play back to back with it. If you're a pretty good tennis player, your gut, even as a hybrid, I think is a disadvantage unless you have arm issues. I'd stay away from it. A full bed of polyester is more consistent and more predictable. Once you throw gut in it, yes, you may get a little more power, but sometimes you'll think you'll hit a ball perfectly and it will sail with gut, either wide or a little long. And it's the string. Sometimes you hit it perfectly and either the string didn't snap back the same way as a polyester would, and that is the problem. I think anybody that's using a gut hybrid like Novak, again, they've been using it forever. Maybe they can't switch, but it's a mistake because it's less accurate. It's just guaranteed less accurate than polyester, pure polyester in a full bed. Strings now are much different. Mark McDonald says strings now are much different before 2000 and after 2000, right? Before 2000, way different. After 2000, every string, Alu Power was one of the first popular polys. It's still every bit as good today as when it's fresh as any other string on the market. And that's why so many pros still use it, because they're always using fresh set of strings. But there's no version of string that's much more accurate or predictable than Alu Power is. That's why pros still use it. They're different feels and different textures and all that, but not better. Agassi said it became more consistent because of the strings. Yes, 100%. Boy, every one of us did when we went to Poly. It was like all of a sudden we learned how to play tennis at a much higher level. So I have so many comments. Thank you everybody for leaving so many comments. I wish I could get to them all, but of course I can't. I just have to scan through these. Agassi's backhand, Sampras serve, Alcaraz forehand are for me the most beautiful shots. Oh, you're going to go Alcaraz. So that was from Kay Wallen saying Agassi's backhand, Sampras' serve, and Alcaraz's forehand are for me the most beautiful shots. Wow, Agassi's backhand. Yeah, really good. I would say one-handed backhand, Wawrinka all day long on a one-hander, two-hander, um, Nalbandian, David Nalbandian, two-handed backhand over Agassi. Yes, in my book anyway. Sometimes it was forced looking, but just so smooth most of the time. Alcaraz's forehand, I take Federer's forehand all day long in terms of beautiful shots. Sampras's serve, yeah, not arguable. No one could argue that anyone had a more beautiful serve than Sinner. I know you can say that's subjective if you think so. I don't think so. I don't think anyone could say that anyone had a nicer looking serve and a more effective serve than Pete Sampras. And using an 87 or 85 square inch racket with gut and what he was able to do. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine with Pete with a 95 square inch racket in today's game? Oh, his serve would be magical, more magical than it even was. So that's my thought there. Let me jump down to the bottom. So I just had to refresh the comments. So if I scrolled by you, sorry that I couldn't get to some of the more interesting comments there. Typo, strings haven't changed that much. Oh, Mark Madonna. Okay, thank you for clarifying. That's right. Strings haven't changed much since 1997. Well, there's a lot more variety of strings, but once polyesters came out, they certainly haven't changed that much. So thanks for the clarification. Sorry for disputing that with you in your last comment. Tennis Lover says, hey, yo, what's up? Told you that Carlos will get his revenge. Yes, you told me. All right. So I think Tennis Lover, you should make your own prediction videos. Let's see how you do. Carlos had his revenge, but mostly because of court conditions. The ball's lively bounce on this court certainly favored Carlos, no doubt about it. Trump looks so mad, Sinner lost. Okay, I don't know about that, and I could care less when it comes to this tennis channel about, other than the fact that if I was in attendance at the U.S. Open today, did you see that? I would be pissed because half the stadium was empty during the first set because of the security, extra security for Trump. The amount of money you have to pay, I wouldn't go to the U.S. Open anymore anyway, period. Unless I had preferential treatment and we had total VIP package, no way. The crowds, number one, the cost, typical American exploitation, way, way too expensive to go to a match. How many people they let into the tournament. And then they, because of the extra security, most of the people missed the first set. So Trump being there, I would have been pissed if I was going there to enjoy myself, having to go through that type of security and then missing the first set. No thanks. I think that was, I don't know what you can do, but that's garbage. Have you thought about coaching, Bucksy? I used to coach a lot in my younger years. I ran tennis clubs and taught, had a tennis teaching system, but these days I just enjoy the sport and doing YouTube, but and playing as much as possible. So I'd rather coach online and point out some things that people might agree with or disagree with. So to each their own, right? But thanks for that. So I live in New York City. It became an influencer test. I may have missed your. Have you thought about coaching? I'm not sure where you were going with that, Bucksy, but okay. Sorry, I can't talk on that. Court conditions, Lafayette, you say simply the truth. Carlitos was the superior in any conditions, full stop. Yes, Oscar. Carlos is representing you so much. You should be so proud. I hope you have a wonderful day because your guy won. That's awesome for you. If you put that much emphasis on what happens, there's some guy that you think's representing you for whatever reasons you think so. I think sports fans get way too rabid, unhealthily rabid about rooting for someone. The perfect example is the Brazilians versus the Argentinians in soccer. Boy, talk about hate, like actual hate, and how ridiculous you can disagree. But when it comes to sports, hating the other team and having your whole day or your week ruined by what something happens in sports, come on, Oscar. Like, that's just, you're being manipulated in sports. Don't let who you root for in a team or a player ruin your day if they don't win, and going to feeling like you have to support them at anything. So that's my full stop. If you are that vested in what some 20-year-old is doing on a tennis court or on a sports field, and you think that changes your life, I don't know what to tell you. Again, I always call a spade a spade. So there it is. If I think it's nonsense, it's silly, it's adolescence to get so, people call me a hater. Like, people need to stop with that, using that word wrong. Hate, disliking or not finding someone's game less appealing than somebody else. I think Alcaraz is an amazing dude. I think Alcaraz is amazing. I just don't love his game as much as I prefer Sinner's game. So, but if Sinner loses, did my day change at all? No. Did my mental health change at all? No. Do I feel bad for Sinner? A little bit, but not really. He still made millions of dollars, and he's living in a wonderful life, and he's living a privileged life, right? So, no, I don't care that much. I care when I'm watching it because it gives me a little bit of entertainment, just like it does all of us, and that's why we watch tennis, and hopefully we learn some things and take it onto the court ourselves. Okay. Oh, well, Bug Z. Okay, here's your comment. No, I was saying that the New York Open is full of influencers and people who are there for the pics and the TikToks. Real tennis fails have been priced out. Oh, you want to hear something interesting, Buck Z? Um, they're not just showing up because they want to be seen. They're being paid and VIP'd. They're being called by the US Open. So all these actors and famous people that are showing up to the US Open like it's the greatest event, it's like the Super Bowl and you have to be there and you have to be seen. Yeah, it's because the US Open, or the USTA in specific, is calling them up and saying, hey, do you want to come to the US Open? We'd love to have you there. We're going to pay for your travel. We're going to put you up, or there's all kinds of events we're doing. You're going to get box seats for free. They do everything for them because the USTA is trying to make it seem like the Super Bowl for tennis, which it's one of them, right? It's one of the Super Bowls. And they're using it because they get other people to believe that this is the place you have to be. So next year, all these influencers and celebrities are going to be at the US Open. So we have to go. And if it's $600 a ticket, we're going to go anyway. We're going to spend all of our savings to go to the US Open just to have some sightings of some influencers and actors and other famous people. But it's not organic. It's manufactured. It's manufactured by the USTA. It used to be cool when some tennis fans who are also famous would show up because they want to be there. They truly want to be there for the tennis. That's not what it is like today. These 100 different actors and famous people showing up to the US Open, it's all manufactured. It's all because they're getting these events. They're all going to events together. It's, imagine if you got called up by the USTA and they'll pay for basically everything and give you the best treatment possible just to have you show up. Like, that's why it's getting priced out, right? Because they can raise the prices more and more because they want people to think that it's the greatest event to attend to. But if I was a fan, I used to go to the Open from 1990 1989, starting in 89, when I first saw Pete Sampras practicing against Mats Wilander in 1989 in a practice match, and watched him blow out Wilander in 1989. He blew him out 6-1 in a practice match. And then I said, oh, that guy's going to win the US Open. Didn't even know who he was. And he won the match. He won the tournament. I was 19 years old. So I've been going to the Open since 89 through about 2000. Most years I would go to the Open, but it just getting more crowded and a little less fun. So now I go to Indian Wells, which is now also starting to get like that. But Indian Wells is still a great tournament to visit. And I get that US Open feel and get really up close like I used to get back in the 80s and 90s. I get that at Indian Wells now, but I wouldn't go to the US Open because of just the nonsense that is, current America. Do you think Fonseca will get good enough to compete with Carlos and Yannick? I need someone else to spoil their party and make tennis interesting. That was from Smartass Omaiza. I have a video coming up. I already shot it. I just need to publish it. It's all about Fonseca and can he compete? I'm going to give you the inside scoop. And I'm sorry to say, no, I don't. He's going to be a great tennis player. He's a fantastic tennis player already. Do I think Fonseca will get good enough? No, he won't. He will not be able to compete with these guys on a regular basis. And I'll break down why I think that. Not even really why I think it. I'm going off of historical evidence to suggest why you want, obviously he's a very popular Brazilian and he's seems like a great dude, great game, nice game to watch. But he's not going to get to the level of Carlos and Sinner, at least not in my analysis. So people get too sensitive. I think so. Aaron says, "Oh, interesting. Reality celebrities that's illuminating appearances. Yeah, they're paid appearances, right? Celebrities are getting paid basically by getting everything for free to show up. How's Miami? Oh, the Miami tournament, says Mark Madonna. How's Miami? Been there as well. Used to be awesome when it was Key Biscayne. When it was held at Key Biscayne, that was an amazing tournament, very much like Indian Wells is today or was. But Miami is awful, awful. They need to get rid of that tournament out of Miami and bring it to Vegas or something. Put it under the mountains and have like Indian Wells and Vegas back to back in the West. Even though that loses the tournament on the East Coast, which would suck for the southeastern United States. But Miami has no other suitable facilities that could support other than Key Biscayne that would make a tremendous tennis tournament. So the Miami tournament, I can't stand that tournament, and I think a lot of players feel the same way. Mars says, I'm banned because my serves leave holes in the court. Nice. And every slam does paid appearances for influencers now. That's sad. Yeah, I'd love to be paid too, but I don't think I'm the influencers type that they want there. No one gives a shit, right? But yeah, it's cool to show up. I used to have some really nice access at Indian Wells. That access is being a little bit more restricted by the ATP. Things are getting a little bit, security is just getting a little out of hand, a little bit too insane. But that's the way things are, right? Especially in America. Back, who will be the Murray and Wawrinka in the Synchronized era? Sorry, who will be the spoiler basically between Sinner and Alcaraz? There's no one on the radar. There might be a temporary spoiler. Like I see Ben Shelton as a one slam wonder if everything falls his way, just like Andy Roddick. I don't think there's anyone like Murray or Wawrinka on the horizon that could win 4 slams and sort of mix things up with Alcaraz and Sinner. They're just not there right now. There might be a couple juniors coming up, but even there, you have to go really deep to even possibly find someone. Um, that Greg, I love that. Buck Z says, haha, they don't want grumpy TK at their slams. Laughing out loud, you're not getting paid. Yeah, you got that right. You can't toe the line. Like I said, I don't think my videos are controversial, but I think they can be opinionated. And apparently, judgment in today's world, judgment is viewed as really negative. Having a strong judgment on something and not being overly critical, not being nasty, but just having a strong opinion about something that's not manufactured is not welcome these days, right? That's taboo for whatever reason, and that's kind of silly, right? That's why we lose good content, and that's why all good content these days, the best content is on YouTube, right? Because you get people that can speak freely. You never want to be an asshole to be an asshole, right? Or be grumpy to be grumpy. You just want to be able to speak freely, and hopefully you're not an ass when you're speaking. But the best content, the most freeing content, the most inspirational content is on YouTube these days because what you can and can't say. And I'm not saying that you should be, if you're a jerk, you shouldn't say some of the things, right? Some people just don't deserve to be on TV. Maybe that's someone that has my sort of opinions and views, but judging people and judging it constructively, losing that is what is sad, right? Dimitrov almost beat Sinner at Wimbledon. That's true. That's clearly Dimitrov was having a great day. I'm not saying these guys can't lose. So when you say, can anyone challenge Alcaraz and Sinner in a Grand Slam if they're both healthy and playing well? The answer to that is no. It's going to take some event or series of events, like a plane crash, and it's a weird analogy, right? A plane crash is Usually it has to be a minimum of 3 things, 3 bad decisions or 3 failures that have to happen before a plane crashes. There's always a sequence of events that has to happen for a plane to crash. It's never just one thing. Um, it's always a sequence of events that causes a plane to crash. And so you want to go plane crash analogies. So you're talking about Shelton winning or Alexander Zverev winning a Grand Slam, or somebody else. It's going to take like that plane crash scenario. You're going to have to get, one guy's going to have to get sick, another guy's going to have to get injured, and then you're still going to have to win all your matches to have even a chance at winning a Grand Slam, because you're not going to beat these two guys back to back. Novak is proof of this, right? Still the best player in the world, other than 2 other guys. He beats everybody, even at 38 years old. And how do you do that, right? So no chance for someone without a sort of that plane crash analogy happening before anyone else can win a Grand Slam. It's going to take a sequence of events. And because it's only 2 players, it's very likely to happen. Before it was 3 players, and then you had 2 more players, right? So you had Federer, Novak, and Nadal. And then occasionally you had Murray stepping in for a couple of years and Wawrinka coming in to take away, and then Dominic Thiem 1 year. So there were 3 plus 2. So it was harder to get through 3, and then you plus had 2 more guys. Now you only have 2 guys. So there's more likely the plane analogy scenario to happen, where a sequence of events is going to happen in a Grand Slam. Maybe one guy can't play because they're injured, Alcaraz or Sinner, and then you only have to get through one of them, and maybe one of them is not playing that great, or you're just having an incredible day. But the likelihood of anyone else challenging these guys on a regular basis, not going to happen. Not at least in the short-term horizon for the next year or 2. I'm sure Yannick will fix, so Smarta says, I'm sure Yannick will fix his serve before AO. I like the way Alcaraz fixed his serve. Yep, Alcaraz's serve is just was awesome today. Incredible serving. Let's see what else we have. Mohammed Osama, you just keep making these videos. Give us your wonderful views on tennis and players. I like your analysis. Thank you. Your analysis makes sense. You make good points despite your predictions going right or wrong. I think that's what you meant to write. True. I was on a hot streak for my predictions for a while. It certainly cooled off a bit lately. I made a bad judgment with Novak possibly beating Carlos, but now that Novak has finally lost to Carlos on a hard court in the first time in a while, obviously that's going to continue to happen most likely. So there you have it. So SC Jolly, what's up, SC Jolly? I always think when I see your username, which I see it a lot in the comments, so thanks for all the comments, I always think of Folly Beach in South Carolina. Is that SC, South Carolina Jolly? I think of SC Folly, and there's a Folly Beach in South Carolina. I don't know if you know about it. But I lived in South Carolina for many years, and when I ever see your username, that's why I remember it, because of that fact, that Folly Beach in South Carolina. So Carlos played a great match today. It said Sinner lost, but needs to hire a biomechanics coach for his serve. Probably he needs to do something on a serve to be more consistent for sure. Do you think Sinner had a minor injury? No, it didn't seem so, but who knows? Would an ab injury affect serve? Absolutely. Do I think that was the cause of it? No, these guys always have a little aches and pains and so forth. Some people think that Yannick's too skinny. I think he's like, for tennis is about speed and agility. And I don't think that's one of the reasons why I think Ben Shelton will always be struggle to win a Grand Slam. Ben is a really good athlete, but he's not agile and he's not overly fast. He's not elite fast. And he's not agile. And when you look at someone's body like Alcaraz's or Sinner in particular, because there's more a discrepancy between their body types, or Alexander Zverev, skinny, agile, reflective, lower body mass is more agile typically and better for tennis. So when you see someone who has a bigger body type, not always, but typically that in tennis is a disadvantage. So you look at Ben Shelton's legs, for instance, that's not an advantage. That's an advantage if you're a football linebacker to have legs like that. But in no way does that allow you to move more nimbly and quicker. Look at Novak when he was in his 20s, how skinny he was, and how agile he was because he was skinny. The fact is, you are more agile when your body type is a little bit more slim. So more towards a professional biker or a marathoner or a triathlete. Not that you go that far in tennis, but when I look at tennis as, bodybuilder over here and marathon runner or triathlete over here, or French, a biker over here, where does tennis fall into play? Federer was almost like in the middle, and you could say Nadal was a little bit bulkier. But for the most part, most tennis players are more towards the leaner athletic types, and that is usually an advantage as Sinner's jumping into a press conference here. That leaner body type tends to have more advantages in tennis than a thicker body type. Doesn't say you can't overcome it in the men's game anyway. In the men's game, because the men's game is about speed and agility before it is about power. You don't just, you want precision and speed and agility in the men's game. Precision is so important, and you get precision from agility. If you are less agile because your body type is bigger, it's hard for you to be more precise. And at that level, that's what it is, in my opinion, anyways. Inconsistency issues. So, okay, let me go a few more comments before we shut it down here. Mark, Madonna, genetically big, which is why he was always hurt. That's true. Well, if you're carrying more mass around, like someone like, and I'm not saying it's huge, it's not huge by any means, but the more mass you have, momentum and speed is detrimental to injuries, right? Bigger people on tennis courts, on hard courts, that pounding of extra mass is not protective as much as it is gives you injuries, at least in my opinion. So can we call them the big two already? Yeah, I think so, right? Marcio calls them the big two. Clearly, these guys are the big two. Sinner and Alcaraz are the big two. There's no doubt about it. Just doesn't sound as great for some reason as saying the big three. Runa is that, always been thought of as that guy to be the big three, but I just don't think Runa ever gets there because he has all the physical attributes and skills to be there, and even the competitive spirit, but he just doesn't have the right mentality. I don't think he'll ever be there. Interesting about Nadal, never thought of it that way. So I'm not quite sure what you meant by that. Yes, he played center court. Is that a presser live? Yes. So Arzan, that presser is live behind me. Obviously, I'm not listening to it, but I just saw it through my screen here. Agree. First step, quickness needed, as in baseball. William Knapp. So you agree that in men's tennis, it's quickness and agility on men's tennis. Women's tennis is not there. Women's tennis is about power first as the highest criteria. Speed is important, right? Iga has the speed. Emma Navarro has speed, not necessarily speed, but she has agility and nimbleness like Emma Navarro, but they will get blown out. And I know I can't really compare Iga and Emma because Iga's obviously a much higher caliber, not much higher caliber, but a higher caliber tennis player. But people like Anisimova, power. Sabalenka, power. Rybakina, power. Ostapenko, when she's playing well, power. Flat power, because the women's game is not about speed and agility and getting to shots. It's about first strike tennis, putting your opponent on the defensive. And we all know that just women, their first step, particularly the first step, is not as fast as like these elite athletes on the men's side. You see it in basketball, you see it in all sports, right? The quickness level between men and women is different. And that's why women's tennis is about first strike tennis, getting people off balance and easy power. It's strange sometimes to watch some of these women, how easy their power is. And that goes to show it's not about strength, it's about fluidity, like Anisimova's backhand, how much power she has, how easy that power comes. Like she hits the ball every bit as hard as Yannick and Sinner do, but they swing harder. But they just swing harder with more topspin to generate more spin, so they have more action on their ball, but they're not hitting the ball any harder. There are women that can hit the shots that you see 100 miles an hour, right? It's just a different type of shot with less RPMs. So the men transfer their speed, racket head speed advantage into RPMs, where the women may not never have quite the racket head speed, but they're so smooth. Like Anisimova's backhand, such a great example, is the energy gets transformed more into forward momentum versus RPM momentum. And that's just the way it is. So, but women's tennis is about first strike power and really putting your opponent on at the highest level anyway. And that's why, Iga is the one that sort of breaks that mold from time to time because her speed, and she has great power as well. She's able to have almost the perfect shape of balance, except when she meets those higher hitting, harder hitting players than even she with her better movement. You can see that's a perfect example of that, how movement in women's tennis can't overcome power. It's still an advantage to have the power over the movement in the women's game, unless you can move even better than Iga, which no one has done really, right? Steffi Graf, incredible mover, really fast, obviously with a slice backhand. She was probably one of the most athletic women players with Navratilova in history, and they used their movement to their advantage, of course, and that was a little bit different then. So I don't know if you can compare those to today's game. So back to a few more questions. I see the combo on Alcaraz, quick, strong, clutch. Why are the number of sets different in men's and women's in Grand Slams, but the pay is equal? No other sports has this. Oh, Ramin, you want to really go into this, right? Why are the number of sets different in men's versus women Grand Slams, but the pay is equal? Well, I have an opinion on this, and I don't think it's controversial. I don't think it's bad either. You could clearly make an argument that the pay should not be equal because the men bring in more money than the women, right? This is a business. And if you were just doing it strictly on business, men bring in more audience members and more TV rights money than the women do. And it is true. And that's why they get paid a lot more, the men do, in ATP tournaments versus WTA tournaments when they're not Grand Slams. So that works out, right? But the women want to get paid equally. Well, they can't. The WTA doesn't earn the same kind of money as the ATP, so the ATP players get more. But you're asking why about 3 out of 5 sets. Do you really want to watch 3 out of 5 set tennis in women's play? Like, honestly. I find a lot of tennis sometimes boring. I know that's controversial. Some matches, men's and women's, just boring. I don't appreciate all tennis being played on TV. The length between points sometimes, the lack of great rallies. I don't want to see 3 out of 5 set tennis in the women's game. I think 2 out of 3 is perfect. I don't want to see 3 out of 5 set tennis on the men's game either on every tournament. You could argue, should the women play 3 out of 5 sets in Grand Slams? I guess if you want to use that, like time on court, as some factor for equal pay, I don't think so at all. I think it's great the way it is. The Grand Slams can make over and earn over $500 million in a 2-week period. I know that's the U.S. Open is like $600 million in profit during the U.S. Open for the USTA from this tournament. And that tournament is a men's and women's tournament. And in combination, men's and women's tennis makes that tournament what it is, just like it does for Wimbledon, the French Open, and the Australian Open. It's the collective of what the tournament is. And the tournament brings in TV rights for the whole tournament. It's not segregated by, at least I don't think so, by WTA and ATP, who's watching which and which. It's not segregated. It's a single tournament. So even though the women don't play as much in 3 out of 5 sets, I see nothing wrong with them getting equal pay in a Grand Slam. That Grand Slam makes X amount of money. You have these entertainers, which are the tennis players, from both the men's and women's side. And yes, the men draw more people to the tournament, but getting equal pay or for less play, we have much bigger problems in this world than that. I think that is fair. I think it is right. And I think it is also fair that the WTA players, when they play other tournaments, because they're strictly WTA tournaments and their men aren't there, they get paid less because that business is generating less. So I think the way it is right now is perfect. Now, if WTA players wanted to get the same pay as the ATP players at their independent tournaments, that doesn't math up. It makes no sense. It's just like the WNBA players wanting to make the same money as the NBA players. Come on, give me a break. And WNBA sports don't bring in much money. It doesn't even make money. And so how can they get paid the same as men? As Nadal once said, women models make a lot more money than men models. And should men models make the same amount of money as women models just because they're in the same industry? Absolutely not. Right. So I don't have any problem with, I don't want to watch the 5 set women's tennis. Just don't. I don't think women want to watch, women don't want to play it. People don't want to watch it. So no argument there. Why even consider it? Other than to have this silly um, men versus women um, argument for the sake of gender biases. I think it's silly. So that's my thoughts there. So if you want to flame me for that, I think it's a pretty reasonable explanation. Wow, that's a lot of profit, Aaron. Yeah, 600 million, 2-week tournament, $600 million in profit. And that's the silly part. The players only see about what, 12% or 17% of that money, compared to most sports leagues where they get 50% of the money. So the USTA and the Grand Slams, and that's, I don't even know if that's including all the betting data that's sold. So these tournaments sell betting data to um, like IMG Academy, but there's another IMG company, and they resell it to all the sports books. I don't even know if it includes that. So that's the little dirty secret I've been wanting to do a video on, about how much money there is in sports betting in tennis, because I think it's the number 2 highest amount of sports betting happens in tennis. It's tennis and basketball, number 2 and 3, and soccer being soccer being the number 1 most money being bet on sports. And the data, the real-time data, because there's a scoring event with every point in tennis. So you can bet on every point basically if you want to, and every game. So there's a lot of events you can bet on. And that's why tennis is such big business when it comes to betting. So I don't even know if the betting is part of that USDA profit. I don't know if they disclose it like that, but it is a 401c nonprofit, so it should be available. I just don't know if they itemize it in such a way. The ATP Tour gets $1 billion over the 10-year period for selling their sports data. So not, it's all profit too, right? It's $1 billion 10 years, so $100 million a year to sell their data. And that means behind the scenes, there's even a lot more money being away. That's just to sell the data. So, boy, did we get far away from this match between Sinner and Alcaraz. Do you think Alcaraz is the favorite from at the Australian Open? No, I don't. Thanks for the like. Appreciate the like. I don't know. I'll say who the favorite is for the U.S. Australian Open. He seems to struggle at Australia, so I'm going to say Sinner is probably the favorite at this time. Way too early to tell. It's more about the pay. Players get exploited. Yes, they do. Players get exploited. Yes, they still make a lot of money, but only at the top, right? Tennis is a joke when it comes to playing the 50th ranked player, the 100 ranked player, the 200 ranked player. They can barely, if you're outside the top 80 to 100, you can barely survive in tennis. It's ridiculous how exploited tennis players are compared to other sports. 14% is terrible. Yeah, the rivalry is synchronized. And that's one of the things that I think Novak is wanted to do. But again, he's pretty controversial about, forming a players union, because they don't have a union. Smartass says, why don't players ask for more money? Because they're not unionized. So players are young, right? They're 20 years old, 25 years old. You don't start to really truly understand the business economics or the economics and business of tennis until you become 30s and, when you become older. So most of these guys, when they're making, $1 million, the top guy's making $1 million or $5 million or $50 million when it comes to sponsorships. And most of their money is not coming from prize money. It's coming from sponsorships, at least for the top 5 guys. Then it doesn't seem to be really that important. Even though they're getting exploited, they don't think about how important it is, not just to them, but for lower ranked players, that they should unionize and demand more money, especially for the lower ranked players, because that would make for a much healthier sport. But they just don't understand. When you're 20 years old and you're just focused on playing tennis, you can't blame them. They just don't understand. The rules are the way they are. The game is played the way it is, meaning the game of business. And the players just don't have time. They don't learn about that. They learn about it incrementally as they become 25, 26, 27. And by then they're getting too old and it's too late. And they're already kind of fat and happy, at least the top players. And they just say, there's nothing I can do about it because, making change is hard. Okay, so last couple questions. 5 million for the winner is not cutting it, really. I didn't say 123 Rothschild won 5 million for the winner is not cutting it. It's just like saying, let's make this a little political. 123 Rothschild says $5 million for the winner is not cutting it. Really? Okay, that's like Elon Musk saying he paid 14 billion in taxes. I forget what the number was, but he made 500 billion. Let's say that, whatever the number is, and you're paying a small percentage of taxes, but it sounds like a really big number. So 5 million to the winner, is it not cutting it? No, that's a lot of money, right? By any accounts. But when the tournament is making 600 million and only 70 million of that is going to all the players, no, it's not cutting it. That's not fair. It's not reasonable. It just sounds like a lot of money, 5 million for the winner, but that's for the winner. It's $2.5 million for the runner up. And then after that, it's 1.5 million. That's great, right? The top 6 players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 players make a good amount of money, but then it drops off dramatically. So it's not enough because it's not about the sum, it's about the exploitation that's happening. That's what matters. And just like any big business charging us too much and too much profit margin, and because there's no competitors, right? Is it really the difference? All right, next question. SC Jolly Center said he will work on his serve at the press conference. Oh, that's interesting. Thanks for, that was right behind me. Definitely needs to work on his serve, so it's good to see. These guys won't stop. Oops, sorry. And Smartass says there's a video on YouTube where Taylor Townsend explains how bad it is for the players outside the top 50. Yeah, there's a bunch of videos out there. You can do the math, how much it costs to travel the world, stay in hotels, hire coaching. If you're outside the top 50, a top 50 player can make good money. They got to save it. They got to be careful with their money if they want to be able to retire on that money. It's, even a top 50 player. Here's one interesting fact. I wanted to make a video on this as well. Think about this. A top 40 player, this isn't somewhat related to money, a 40th ranked ATP player. You go to a bar and you go back to your hometown and you're ranked top 40 in the world. Everybody thinks you're crushing it. And they say to you, you're top 40. You're one of the top 40 best tennis players in the world. And they say, you must win a lot of tournaments. And you say, no, I haven't won any tournaments. Maybe you won a 250. I don't win tournaments. And they say, well, you must win a lot of matches. No, I win match and then I lose a match. My record is 500. For every match I win, I lose one. So I lose just as many matches as I win. That's the reality of a top 40 player in this sport. So you're top 40 in the world and you lose as many matches as you win, and you don't make that much money. So think about the top 40 best football player or baseball player or basketball player or soccer player, football, whatever it is. They're making 10x, 20x, 30x, 50x more money than what a tennis player does. And a tennis player has to play 11 months out of the year, constant travel around the world, not being paid for by a team, being traveled by a plane from a team. Their food's not paid for, their hotels are not paid for. Some tournaments do pay for their hotels while they're playing, but they get there early, they may not be paid for. They have to pay all their expenses. They have to pay for coaches. They have to pay for physios. They have to pay for their medical. None of this is stuff that a team sports player gets paid for, right? So a tennis player has to pay for everything. They're their own boss. They're their own corporation and organization. And that is so unlike every team sport out there where all these things are handled for you. Your travel is handled for you. You have travel people handling things for you. You have people booking your hotels. You have people, trainers and physios and airplanes to jump onto. All this being that, none of that happens in tennis, right? That's all on you as a tennis player. So that's my thoughts on that. Sorry about that one. 1, 2, 3 Rockchild. Thanks for understanding. Again, I like to call a spade a spade. I don't think it's fair in terms of how much players get paid, particularly the lower ranked players do. I feel like the Sinner, Mr. Creative, thanks for leaving the comment, 242. I feel like Sinner versus Carlos matchup will hurt tennis in the long run. Need more guys contending for titles. It will get boring. Maybe, weird thing is sports like rivalries, strong rivalries. It probably would be nice to have 1 or 2 guys in there as well. But if it gets too diluted, then it gets boring in a different way. When there's too much parity, the women's game is a great example. Um, since whether you liked or disliked Serena or Graf or Sellers, women's tennis was better when it had the rivalry between Everett and Navratilova. And when you have these strong rivalries, I think Coco Gauff and Naomi Osaka would be an incredible rivalry. They should be the two superstars in my mind in women's tennis. And I think women's tennis would be healthier. Having these sort of parity in women's tennis, Anna Samova this tournament, Iga another tournament, Swiatek, or Sabalenka or Rybakina in the past, I think it makes the sport less interesting, not more interesting. I think most tennis fans, and it's certainly much easier to market when you have, you know, a head-to-head rivalry between 2 or 3 players. I think that's much more dynamic and is proven so. So I don't know if it'll get boring in that sense. All right, Ozan says, this is interesting. So let's see. Ozan says regarding player compensation, the ATP ranked number 40 player in Mute has made $1 million according to the ATP website. That's right. So let's break that down really quickly. $1 million for Mute, who's been having a fantastic year. He's made $1 million this year. And I think all of us would love to make $1 million. Let's start with taxes. Taxes. He's French, right? Mute is French. Yep, French. So taxes, and you get taxed on the tournament you're playing on. Let's just assume 30, 40%. So you're down to from $1 million down to about 600, maybe 650, somewhere in that area. So you got 650,000. Holy shit, that's a lot of money. Okay, now you have a coach traveling with you, maybe full time, 100x thousand, 100 to 2,000 at least, right? If you have a physio, how about all the plane tickets and your hotels and your travel expenses and your food? And you have to pay, if you're taking coaches and physios, which I don't know if Mute has or not, you have to pay for their expenses too, hotel, food, travel, all that stuff. So 600,000 will turn into 2 to 300,000 in no time. Like let's say 200,000 down to 200,000. 200,000, decent amount of money, but when your career is only on average 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you're making $200,000 a year, are you going to retire on that? And you're young, you probably didn't manage your money that well. And your agent, you probably have an agent as well. And that's not a lot of money. So $1 million for a top 40 ranked player sounds like decent money, but it's hardly anything at the end of the year. He's not making much money. He's certainly not saving a lot of money. And I would be, if he's clearing 2 or 300,000, would be a miracle. And again, when your career is maybe 5 years, and he's having a great year this year, or that was probably last year, right? Or is that year to date $1 million? That might be year to date, if that's $1 million year to date on the ATP website. So that would be decent. So he's having a great year. He didn't have that good of a year last year or the year before. So again, I think you have to dive deeper into these numbers once you pay taxes and everything else. Okay. All right. Last question, and let's call it. It's been a great live. Thanks for everybody for joining. What do you think? Who do you think had a better season? That's why Joker lives in Monte Carlo. No tax. That's true. Strong rivalry. Anna Samova versus Sabalenka. Strong rivalry. That's from Laughing. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't entice me too much. It's okay. In my mind, it's an okay rivalry, an American versus Belarusian, maybe. Not much to say there. TK, I don't mind if you call me Folly Beach. You have a knack for fun names. Thanks, SC Folly. Thanks for Folly Beach. That makes it, even your icon doesn't look like a beach, but it looks very spring-like or summer-like. So, you know, there you go. I just want to better look at how much. Sorry, I know I'm babbling a little bit. Thanks, smartass, for joining. And the last question: to understand the unfairness of tennis, it's better to look at how much the 200 ranked player earned. Yeah, that's a great point. And someone could probably look that up, and it's going to be piddlings, right? Because they're challenger players, and they're not making much money at all. It's a sunflower over the Ukraine flag. Oh, that's cool. Folly Beach, well done. I like that that icon. All right. Well, thanks for everybody for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I hope you do. Hit all those buttons, and maybe I'll do some more lives in the future. But for most part, the tennis season is over in terms of Grand Slam play. So the next really big matches are the ATP Finals, and then of course the Australian Open. So thanks for being a tennis fan, and I'll see you guys in the next ace, as I always like to say, whether it's an ace or not. And like Sinner today, there weren't too many aces, except they were all coming from Alcaraz. So see you, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining Aubrey and Folly Beach and everybody else, Sean L. And I can't go through the whole list, but I'll see you in the next ace. See y'all.